Welcome to Chess, ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate you guys very much for stopping by. As you guys do know, we do have the Superbet Romania going on as part of the Grand Chess Tour. And I do have the round 4 game for you between Wesley and Jan Nepomniachtchi. And I changed my chess legend. So Yuri Averbach, I felt like it was fitting to put him up there. I was really trying to think of who I wanted to put up again, but yes, this is the light analysis video of the one I just previously did. Oops, bam. Let's get clear. Can I get clear maybe? Thank you. Okay, and so this is going to be a lot quicker of a video. So for everybody who is coming from the Philippines, I will say Maligayang Pagdating sa mga chess, ladies and gentlemen. Mabuhay to you. Appreciate you guys very much for stopping by. Anybody who is coming from Russia, I will say Dobre Otra, Privyet, Kakadela, Spasibo for coming by and taking a look at my stuff. I appreciate it very much. If you guys are ready to go, let's jump in and see what we have for the game. So let me get my volume up a little bit. Bam. So we do have knight to f3. We got d5, d4. Knight comes to f6. Super symmetrical. We break the symmetry with c4. And black does not want to go c5. They are going to be giving white a very big advantage. So we do see e6. Just very logical, defending of the pawn. And this is the queen's gambit so far. We do have g3, and this is the Catalan opening. This is definitely something that Wesley likes to play a lot. He plays everything, but this was definitely something that he's played a lot of games in, so he has a lot of experience with. We do have bishop to e7. We got bishop to g2. Castles. And then we do have pawn taking c4. And this is the most aggressive way to play. This is definitely the very, very top move in the position. This is a really big branching point in the Catalan. You have so many different options in the position. You have b6, you have c6, you have knight b to d7. I mean, you can even throw rook to e8 in there. Everything, h6, a6. I mean, there's so many different things that you can do. You just have to be really, really careful about this diagonal. But pawn taking c4 just, says, hey, I'm castle. Let me grab a pawn. And I mean, if white doesn't do what they're supposed to do, black can hold on to the pawn. But Wesley knows what to do. So we do see queen to c2. There's also knight to e5 that can come. And it's like, usually after knight to c6, it's kind of like a little pawn sacrifice that you get. But you do get a lot of activity for black. So you definitely have to know what you're doing for white. But like I said, we got queen to c2. b5, Jan is saying, hey, man, I want to hold on to this pawn. But like I said, it is not possible because this bishop can be opened up very aggressively on this rook. And, one of the things about playing this from the black side is you do have a slight problem, trying to develop your queen side if you are trying to hold on to this pawn because you are moving pawns. We do see a4, just trying to break down the structure. We do have a bishop to b7. We got pawn taking b5. And then we have a 6. And even though this looks kind of strange, this is the top move for the position. And we are very much still in theory. We're going to be in theory for quite a long time. So, hang in there. We do have pawn taking a6, knight taking a6. We got queen taking c4. We see bishop down to d5. We see queen queen down to c3, and then we see c5. c5 is almost always going to come in a Catalan. Anytime you have like the white player has a d4, I mean either e5 or c5 is going to have to come so that you can try to break down the position somewhat. So we got bishop to e3, knight comes to e4. Queen comes down to e1. We see knight to b4. And I mean, of course, you have to do something now because the rook is undefended on a1. So either like move your knight somewhere or, just go ahead and trade. But the problem is if you move the knight somewhere, knight is going to be coming to c2. And that's going to be a pretty nasty fork. So rook takes a8. Queen takes a8. We see knight up to c3. Knight takes c3. Pawn takes c3. And then we do have the fork knight to c2, getting one of the bishops. So we do see queen to d2, knight takes c3, queen takes c3, pawn takes d4, pawn takes d4. And like I said, we are still in theory. We still have a few more moves to go until we get out of theory. And so we do have rook over to d8, just adding some pressure onto this pawn here. The queen comes to f4. We got h6, and then we see e3. And this is the novelty of the game. It's actually, I feel like it's kind of strange because e3 is a very, very desirable move in the Catalan. You know, this pawn being on e2 usually is a very big liability because it can become a target. So you usually want to push e3 or even e4, you know, after you play like a rook to e1. So, you know, these are all pretty normal moves. So it's really interesting how we've gotten to this point, and then e3 ends up being the novelty. But anyway, we see bishop to d6, and then we see queen to h4. And even though it looks like, you know, white, like black is actually going to be winning you know, a knight for free because it looks under defended. The queen is trained on this rook. So after all those trades, the rook would hang. So that's why you don't see Jan go into this variation. Bishop comes down to b4. We see queen over to g4. We got bishop taking f3, bishop taking f3. We see queen down to a5. We see rook over to b1. We see bishop to d6, and then we have h4. And this is also a very typical way to play for the Catalan as well. We do see rook over to b8. Rook takes b8. Bishop takes b8. We got d5. You know, with a very clear threat, if black takes, we're going to be seeing the queen come on c8 with check. And that is going to be lights out for that bishop on b8. So the queen comes down to a1 first with check. The king goes to g2. And then we do see queen to e5. And as you can see, black is being very careful with their movements. You see, I mean, black has a nice little advantage, but it's not like, you know, it's just like something to write home about, right? So the queen comes to c4. We see bishop to d6. Pawn takes e6. Queen takes e6. And one of the things as white you do not want to do is trade pieces. I will show you what would happen if you trade. After the trade, you see that white's advantage literally goes to 0. You are going to be in a situation where you have pawns on one side of the board and you have opposite color bishops, which, as you guys know, is drawn like 85–90% of the time. So this isn't something that Jan would have a problem, you know, drawing. So we do not see that. We see bishop to d5. Wesley is fighting, trying to say, hey, man, I'm trying to see if I could get something rolling. We do see queen back to d7. We got h5. And this is very logical in-game type stuff because you are trying to freeze these pawns. As you can see, it's going to be really kind of hard to push this g-pawn in an in-game. You know, not like it's going to be losing, but, you know, it's just things to think about, you know, when you are playing, you know, in-games. So the queen comes to f5. We see queen to c6. So, you know, black has to be very careful about what they're doing because, you know, they can get into trouble if they go grabbing pawns. So we do have bishop back to f8. The bishop comes down to f3, defending the pawn on h5. We see queen over to e6, trying to trade queens again. But Wesley So says, I don't want to have any of that. You know, I got a nice little advantage. Let me just see if I can pull a Magnus Carlsen and try to milk this game to try to see if I can win. So the queen comes down to e5. We see bishop to g4. Queen goes to f6. We see bishop down to d1. We see queen to f5. Queen comes to b7. We see queen to e5. We got bishop to e2. So we just really have a lot of maneuvering going on right now. You know, the advantage is still basically the same for Wesley. So, you know, like I said, I mean, with it being an extra pawn and there being bishops of opposite color, it doesn't look like, you know, that either side can really push for a win unless one side makes a mistake. The queen comes back over to f5. We see bishop back to f3. Queen goes to e5. Bishop goes to g4. We see queen to g5. The queen goes down to f3. We see g6. And this is like the point in the game that things like, you know, start to kind of like, you know, go away a little bit. So the pawn takes on g6. Queen takes on g6. We have bishop up to f5. We see queen to f6. And this does not drop a discover and attack like this because the king will just move forward. And I mean, the queen is defended. So we do see queen over to d5. We got queen to d6 trying to trade again. The queen comes to c4. We got queen down to b4 trying to trade again. We do see queen down to e2. Queen goes to b7 with check. And of course, we're not going to block with the queen because that just gives black what it wants. The king sidesteps over to h2. We see bishop to g7. Bishop comes to d3. We see queen to d5. We see bishop to c4. We got queen over to e4. Bishop back to b3. Queen to f5. And then, like you guys just saw, the bar went up a little bit. This does give white the opportunity to get a tempo on black and chase the queen. And also, they are protecting the only square that black has a check on. So after we see the move e4, you know, black is basically going to have to get in a little bit more of a defensive position. You cannot allow this pawn to just continue to push because you are going to be looking at some checks here. And you're just going to be, you know, down a pawn still. So the queen does come back to f6. We see king to g2. Queen goes over to b6. We see bishop to d5. We got bishop to d4. We have e5. So like I said, I mean, the pawn is getting to start rolling. This position is going to start opening up in front of the king. So there's a lot of tactics that could come up in this. So we do see queen to g6. And we have actually reached the point in the game that if you do want to pause the video and see what killer move Wesley So played in this position, go ahead and do so. Okay, cool. So as you guys saw, I mean, the bar just like insanely jumped up where it's like basically white is completely winning the game. The first thing that you should be noticing about the position is that this bishop is completely undefended. So like when you notice this, your mind should start thinking like, man, what can I try to do to win like that piece or some material or something, right? So it's like you start to, when you get in certain positions, like, and you have a favorable position and you have a tactic in the position, usually it starts with like recognizing something in somebody's position, and then that basically gives you the answer. So knowing that the bishop is undefended, that should start making your mind circulate like, okay, like I said, what can I do to try to, you know, get this piece? So the most explosive move in any position is going to be a check, right? So if you guess the move, bishop takes f7, you would be absolutely correct. And this is actually the position that Nepomniachtchi did resign the game. You see the bar. And basically there are two different ways that you can take back that make any kind of sense. Anything else is literally just completely just 1000% lost. And it is queen takes f7 and king takes f7. So looking at both of those, if the king takes on f7, this is simply queen to c4 with check. And then no matter what black does, you're going to be picking up this bishop. And the alternate is more of the same. After the bishop takes on f7, if you take with the queen, you are going to be able to check on g4. And, you know, no matter what black does, you're going to be taking the bishop. So as you can see, you pretty much end up in a very similar position. And so winning it is pretty much going to be the same. I mean, you have two extra pawns against black's pawn in an endgame. And this is completely just 1000% won. You're going to be pushing pawns. You're going to be moving the queen up, cutting the king off, starting to push this pawn, and there's really not anything black can do about it. So that is the end of that game. So like I said, for all my people in the Philippines, maraming salamat aking makaibigan for checking out my stuff. Spasibo for anybody coming from Russia, and I'll see you guys next time.